welcome to the Art of Decluttering podcast. I'm your host, Amy Revell, and I'm here today with one of my favourite professional organisers. Hi, Freya.
Hello.
So Freya has been with the Art of Decluttering for years now and has got so much experience. And I have been trying to get her to come on the show for a long time, and I almost had to drag her kicking and screaming.
Almost.
She's here. And the thing that I really wanted Freya to be able to share with you guys is Freya is also a kinder teacher. And so you know how when your kids go to childcare or kinder and you kind of watch them and think, that's not my child. Why are they sleeping so well? Why are they eating all the vegetables that the kinder teachers serve for lunch? Why do they pack up? Why do they do all these things that they don't do at home? And so what I wanted Freya to come and talk about is how to engage our kids when we're packing up, knowing where things belong, taking responsibility for things. And so we're just going to kind of mine Freya's brain. So how long have you been a kinder teacher, Freya?
So I've been a kinder teacher for 4 years now, but I did actually start in the early childhood sector a bit earlier than that. I used to, when my children were young, I ran a family daycare service, which is where you have 4 children under the age of 5 in your home, and you basically run a childcare, a very small scale childcare from home. And so I did that, 5 days a week when my kids were young. And then I decided, and then COVID came, and I decided that I actually wanted to be out of the house and meet with other people and be out of my own 4 walls. And so I then moved into a kinder.
And do you do 3 or 4-year-old rooms? It's 4-year-old, isn't it, for you?
It is. So I did. I've done 3-year-old kinder for a year, and I've done 4-year-old kinder for 3 years.
Awesome. And did you doing home? What do you call it again? Family daycare.
Family daycare. Yeah.
So you're using your own home, so you've got extra motivation for it to be organised.
Yes.
And you can control it.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you go to kinder.
Yes. So it was really interesting. I mean, I look around my home now and I can see all my cubes and my storage and everything's labelled, and I felt like in order for me to still find my home to be a home as well as a workplace, I needed to be making sure that I wasn't packing up after 8 hours of kids running around my house each night. And I needed to make sure that, everything had a home and it wasn't a mess at the end of the day that then made me not dislike my job, but made me want to continue doing what I was doing. I needed to make sure I didn't resent my work. So things had to have a place. And also, I mean, that was when I started initiating, pack up time and making sure that the children had time to transition between activities and making sure that everything was labelled. So I have lots of containers or cubes or boxes or whatever, and the children knew where each item went. Everything had a home. I didn't like having things on the floor too often, unless we were playing with them, of course, but I didn't want the children tripping over. I didn't want to be tripping over myself over 4 little people. It was really important not to have hazards lying around everywhere. And so all my containers had, all my boxes, all my cubes, they had either wording on it, and most of them had pictures. So if it was dress ups, there was a picture of a witch's hat and a witch's outfit and wand, or a fireman hat, or those kinds of things. All the boxes for the blocks, they all had a picture of several blocks on it, so that the children knew when we were packing up, they knew exactly where to put it and where it went.
I have so many questions that I didn't even think I had to ask before we started talking. I can imagine it would have been really tricky to limit the quantity of things, because when you've got 4 kids under 5 that you're looking after and they're coming and they're going and they've all got different interests and they've come from different backgrounds, it must have been tempting to be like, I want to have trucks and cars and trains and dolls. And how did you decide what to have, and how did you create boundaries?
I was pretty lucky. I had in my home, I've got two kind of zones, I guess you'd say. And one of the zones was bulk storage, but it also became the sleep zone. So when the children all had a sleep, that was really important that area, the floor, was kept clear so that all the mattresses and the cots and everything could come out. So there were definitely spaces for all of those big items that went in the cubes. And then in the other zone, it was the most of the area that we were playing with right there and then. And so we had a little bit of storage, but not too much. And so everything had to fit in the cubes at the front, in our front room where the kids slept. So, and also it was really important to make sure that I was always meeting the interests of the children. So, we had some kids who really did love cars and trucks and everything, and I just made sure that the trucks and the trains and the cars and all those things, all the wheels, they all fit into one cube. And it was okay, totally okay that trains was in with cars. Like that was absolutely fine. But I had to work out how much space I had and then be realistic about how much of that was going to be played with as well, because, it's great to have 20 train sets, but if they're not being used, then it's not necessary. So we really only needed one train set. I think at one point I had a plastic train set and a wooden train set. Okay, great.
Oh,
I know. That was a lot. But you know what? Both of those sets, plus the trains and the cars and the trucks and all those things, they still fit in the cube that I had them.
Yep.
So it didn't really matter. And the kids also learnt about the different materials things are made of and how plastic train sets are bendable and how they can move. They learn all these kinds of things from different resources. And it was important to meet all of their needs and all of their interests and keep them curious. But it just, everything had to stay and fit into these cubes that I've got. And that was essential. Yeah.
I think that's really key too, is that you predetermined the location and the storage and then you filled it. Like you didn't just go to the Kmart and go crazy and buy everything and then go, okay, now what am I going to do? No. It was like, here's what the space we have. How do we use that best?
Yeah. And I think I also, the cubes were really awesome actually, because I then also gave a cube to each child for their belongings when they came in the day. So they had a locker. And that held all their personal items and their cuddly toys ready for sleep time and their water bottles and the things they left behind, because I had children who came, every day of the week. So, they left a water bottle here and I didn't want their water bottle on my kitchen bench, because then, oh goodness, things just get out of hand then. So, they had their own cubes as well and that had their name on it. And so again, if they knew that they needed to find something that they'd left there the day before, there it was in their cube.
And this is like what you're saying is great because it was family daycare. But if you've got 4 kids under 5, what you're describing is brilliant. Like here's your cube that's got your shoes and maybe your sun hat and your water bottle. And this is where all the toys go. And that kind of order is brilliant in a family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also routine is really important for children. Structure.
Talk to us about that.
Routine and structure is so important because it gives them the guidelines of which their day is going to progress. If they know that we're going to go to the park after morning tea, then they know that they need to get their hat on. They know that they need to put their shoes on, right? And if the shoes were in 5 different places, they would be frazzled, they would be uncertain, they would not feel prepared. And in life, that's what those kind of skills are so important for a child to learn, that's something that they want to, that's something that they feel like certain about, that something is coming up and something's going to occur next. And so knowing where they can find their hat and their water bottle when they're asked to means that they're ready and they can be excited about going to the park rather than worrying about where their hat is.
That's a lovely idea, even the idea of telling kids, like, here's what the day looks like,
yes.
rather than, all right, 5 minutes and we're going to the park, and giving them like that little transition warning, but actually saying in the morning, so today we're going to go to the park and then we're catching up with Nana for a baby chino or whatever it is.
Sure.
And actually allowing them to kind of anticipate, maybe if you've got to take them, to the dentist, don't tell them ahead of time. But the rest, I still don't tell my 17-year-old when we're going to the doctor.
Oh, no, we got flu vaccinations the other week and, oh, goodness. Yeah, we didn't give them much notice.
So I pick them up from school, and as we're driving, I'm like, just so you know,
this is where we're going. Yeah. Yeah, so a really important thing that we have at Kinder, and actually, I have it at home too, is a visual learning chart or a visual schedule, or however you want to call it. There's so many names for them. But at Kinder, we have children who learn really differently. Everyone is different. We all learn a totally different way. And so in a Kinder room, you need to be able to find the best way that each child learns, so that you capture their attention and you capture their
well, it's kind of like engaging them, isn't it? Like you've got their attention, but they're actually buying in to what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the visual chart, it's so easy, and we have group time and we talk about what is coming next and we do every transition so that the children know. The other thing is, and so I also have that at home a little bit, where we have it's a chore chart, but it's not really chores. It's like, take responsibility for yourself. My kids are primary school age. They know how to, what needs to happen. And so it's about making their bed, it's brushing their teeth, and eating their breakfast, packing their bag, brushing their teeth, and all before we need to leave. And they know what time we need to leave. So, but they have pictures. They have a whiteboard marker that they tick it off each day. It gives them that sense of achievement.
Yeah.
And in the same sense, we have a similar kind of thing at Kinder where we have our visual chart of our activities for the day. And then we also talk, and so then on group time, we also talk about what order those things are going to happen in. And then we also talk about being responsible for our space. So we have, at the moment, although I have to say each, term we add another one in, but at the moment we've got 6 jobs. And, the child that is, 6 children that are sitting on the mat beautifully doing active listening, they get to choose a job that they can have for the day. And that involves sweeping the floors, stacking the chairs.
I love that that's a reward.
I know, and it's so fantastic because the children, they just get so involved and they are really proud of having a responsibility in the room. It's fantastic. I think also, though, because we amp it up, we make sure they know that it's really exciting and they're lucky to be chosen and it's their special time, and, they get to choose. It's all visual on the wall. So they get to pick out, they take their picture that we have printed out and laminated, and then they stick it next to the job, and they get to stand there and choose which one they want. And it means then that when it comes to putting out the compost bins on the tables before snack time, they get to leave we go, oh, remember Joe blog, it's time, you can pop up now. You can come and get the bins. You ready to set the table? Are you ready? It's going to be exciting. Oh, today's your special day. You really milk it for them. But then, obviously we've transitioned that conversation by talking about, and obviously we've extended that conversation by talking about why composting is important and why we are adding food for our worm farm outside. And so they all know why it's important. And so then that also provides some accountability for their job and why they want to achieve it. So then they get to go and empty the bins and they get to feed the worms, and it's all very exciting. And that really gives a sense of accomplishment for them.
Yes.
And at the same time, they're getting rid of all the rubbish for us, so we don't have to do it.
Yeah. And you're teaching them really great skills, like not just we get to eat lunch, but the whole picture of that is at the end, what do we do with the scraps? What do we do with that? And so when they're at home, they've also got those extended learnings.
Yeah, I remember we started talking about composting and recycling and being environmentally friendly. And the next day, everyone was like, oh, I put my green bin out today, or I saw a purple bin on the way to school. those conversations, if you make them really enjoyable and engaging, then it really gets the children's attention, which is lovely.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. Is like, how do we engage them in that? Because I think if you just said, all right, everybody has to pick up this, and like you just make it a chore and a drain, and this is not exciting, and we don't know why, we don't know the value in it, kids don't want to do that. But when you do what you're doing, which as a parent, I'm like, I wish I'd known this when my kids were younger and I'd thought more about how to engage them in that process.
Yeah, I think if you can make it fun, it makes it so much more enjoyable and engaging for
Mm,
children.
mm,
So at Kinder we have a pack-up song, which anyone could Google. It's just a
yeah,
very simple pack-up song, but we put it on and and the teachers, all our educators, we kind of dance around and like while we're picking up something, we give it a little boogie in the air. Like it's we make it
yeah.
fun and make it enjoyable. And
Mm,
then we also, at home you can do a similar thing. I mean, you could play the pack up song, or often I'd play a game with my kids when there's 500 pieces of Lego on the floor after there's been a massive creation session, and we then say, okay, how many blue pieces can you pick up? How many purple pieces? Can I do it with my eyes closed? Now we have to take it to the front room. We've got 10 pieces each. Can we hop? Can we jump to
yeah,
get there? Gosh, this is funny. Aha, you banged into the wall. That was silly. Like those
yeah.
kinds of that kind of engagement really helps to keep them involved in the process and reminds them that they're doing something fun rather than doing something mundane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're going to go to a quick break, but when we come back, I want to hear some of the training on how to do it, because I think one of the things you just touched on then was really, really good, that you often do it with them, and that's part of the training and how to do that. So we're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be back. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be back in a minute. So, Freya, one of the things that clients often say when they reach out and they speak to me is, I never learnt this stuff in school. I never learnt how to be organized. I never learnt how to declutter. Everything was just chaotic. My house was chaotic. And then I went to school and I always felt chaotic. But what you're talking about is, as an educator, and you were an educator before you were a professional organizer, and now you're like the perfect match of both,
Thank you.
is you're doing it with the kids and explaining to them some of the guardrails and the boundaries. So at home, one of the things that used to drive me crazy is when the kids would like tip out every toy they owned onto the floor. But
Yeah.
in kinder, I just don't ever seem to see that. Like when my kids were little, everything had spots, and it was like everybody's doing Play-Doh, or we've got one activity out, and then the kids would just pack it up before they got the next one out. So how do you teach these magical skills to children?
It's a trick of the trade. It's magic. No, it's not. It's look, it's really important that we set these boundaries from day one. So I always make sure that we have the room set up in exactly how we would want it to at the beginning of the year, because
Mm-hmm.
then we can demonstrate that this is our expectation from day one. So if you were to buy something new, think about where that toy is going to go in your home.
That's
Think
great.
about what kind of storage you might need. If you haven't, I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware of LOL dolls, but they are the size of like a matchbox, and then they have shoes for the matchbox size thing, and the shoes are, how are you going to store them? How are you going to make sure that they're not going to be lost behind the couch? Those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things. So at Kinder, we make sure that we have a container for each item. So things are not just left lying on tables. They have a space that it all fits into. So we don't buy a tiny, tiny box for the Duplo, because the Duplo is not going to fit in the box. It's going to overflow and it's going to end up on the floor. So we make sure we have a tub for Duplo. And then we also make sure that we don't have 500 pieces of Duplo. the likelihood of 33 children wanting to play with Duplo at the same time is pretty low. So we only have enough for, I mean, I'm guessing at how many pieces, but we don't have an enormous box. We have a medium-sized box. And if it all tips out, okay, maybe it might be 50 pieces, but it doesn't cover the entire floor. It doesn't go everywhere. It's a small number. With the Play-Doh, we make sure that there is, 4 or 5 different shapes. No repeats. There's the number of rollers for Play-Doh. If it's a 4-chair table, we'll only have 4 rollers. We don't need to have 50 rollers. We don't need to have excess equipment.
Yeah.
And so we make sure that everything that is necessary to use your imagination and be creative is there, but not enough to overwhelm the space. Because also, if there are the number of times you find 50 shapes and then 45 of them end up on the floor because the children are moving around and they get knocked off, and then it ends up on the floor and they don't play with it, and then the space is overwhelming because there is so much to pack up.
And as a PO, do you see that when you're in clients' houses where you think there's enough toys in this house for to run a childcare centre, and you've got 2 kids?
Yes.
And no wonder it's messy and never quite gets organised.
And overwhelming, absolutely. Yeah. So there are so many ways that you can get around that when you're in the home. And it happens like this in kinder too, but when you're at home and you have so many toys on display, it can be overwhelming for children to know what to play with. And so what I often do for clients is I have we have a storage box, and what we do is we put half of the toys in the storage box, and the storage box goes in the garage. They may be some of the children's favourites. They may not be. They may be a variation. It might be you have the wooden train set inside and you take the plastic train set outside, and then say in a month or 2 months you swap them over. So you take out a huge pile of toys and you bring the ones in from the garage. It feels like new toys for the children, but also it reduces the space that's being used by toys by half. And so that means that you can rotate your toys. The children might forget that they have things, and it feels like Christmas 5 times a year, which is fantastic. And I'm in kinder, it's the same thing. To make sure that the children stay engaged, we don't give them the same toys week after week after week. That would not be engaging. So we have a storeroom, which is, the same version of a garage, and we just pull out different things based on their interests. So if they've expressed interest in the solar system, great. The next day we've got a world globe out, and we've got materials that we can make, all the solar systems and where does Earth fit in, and what colors, maybe we can paint them, and so we put them on the craft table. So things are extended upon based on the kids' interests. And again, we also minimize the visual clutter. So we don't have all our we have lockers for all the children, and on top it's one big long empty bench until
tempting
yes, through the day everything gets piled up on there, and that is cluttering. And there's also glass windows behind it, and so everyone in the corridor can see. It's not a good look, because you want to show that you are being professional and maintaining the education standard that you're wanting. So, those things, we make sure that those shelves are clear and the things are being put away, because in our storeroom, everything has a spot on the shelf. It's all labelled. Yep. Of course it is. It's my storage room. What do you think? Everything's labelled. But it means that, that jigsaw puzzle, you know exactly where to put that jigsaw puzzle back. Yeah. And also, touch it once. One of our art of decluttering mottos, touch it once, don't touch it 5 times. Don't just shuffle it from one spot to the next. Touch it once, put it back exactly where it needs to go, so that then you don't have to keep repeating it, keep doing it again and again. You just do it once.
I love the idea. I'm remembering, it feels like a very long time ago when my kids were preschoolers, but I remember the days when I would actually plan, rather than say go into the playroom and play, I would say, today, why don't we do like shops and kitchens? And so you can actually get out the toys specific for that and set it up rather than the kids just kind of whirlwinding their way through. Because also you do need downtime as an educator, but as a parent to be able to go, I do need you to just play quietly for half an hour. And my experience, and tell me if you think the same, is that the kids are much more likely to play quietly for half an hour when there's an activity or they're being directed in a way rather than walk into that overwhelming playroom and entertain yourself with who knows what, and they'll pull everything out.
Absolutely. That's such a common conversation that we're having at Kinder, particularly among parents in the hallways. They're wondering how they can keep their children engaged in an activity so they can do something, put the laundry on or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's really important to talk to them about how we run a bit of a routine so that they in our classroom so they can get some skills and ideas that they can take home.
I've just written down engaged versus entertained.
Yeah.
And I think that's revolutionary in my mind. I'm going, oh my gosh, because sometimes we just want our kids to be entertained, but actually what's good for their brains is for them to be engaged.
Absolutely. We're in the process of talking about whether we'll get a gaming console in our house.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't got one. And my horror is they're just going to turn into have square eyes and then they're going to be entertained. But I find that, the arguments we have in our house are about who gets to use the iPad, who gets to choose the channel on the TV. And that's just being entertained. That's not using their brain. That's not being curious or imaginative or using their brain to do something really cool. And so we've actually introduced screen-free Sunday, which
I love it.
Oh, my children
How do you is it screen-free mummy and daddy too?
Not so much, not always. We still have to run the house,
Yeah.
But certainly, after we came home cold and wet from soccer on Sunday, and okay, we watched a movie, that was fine. But we're not watching 3 hours of gymnastics videos. We are not going.
It's intentional.
Yes. So actually, yesterday the kids came home and we made a diorama.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Well, we got off the screens and it was like, right, what should we do this afternoon? And we're going on a holiday soon, and they wanted to make their own version of that holiday. And so we found shoeboxes, we got toilet paper out, and I set them up and engaged them in making what they wanted to make.
Awesome.
But that makes such a difference it just makes such a difference to their attitude as well, like they go into something thinking potentially that they can't do it. And then they come out of it and they're really proud and they couldn't wait for another parent to come home and tell them all about it. And they were just so thrilled to be engaged in an activity that kept their brain busy. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
We could keep going. There's so much that I know that parents are like, I want to know more from Freya. So if you do, jump into the Facebook community. Just search the Art of Decluttering community on Facebook and ask a question, and Freya will be able to answer it. Our team are in there. If you're in Melbourne, Freya can come out and work with you. If you're a kindergarten owner, childcare owner, family daycare owner, and you're actually like, I'm so busy and under the pump, but I want some Freya magic. Like, our team can literally come out and work in your childcare centre. We've done schools and we can come and do that. So there's plenty of ways that you can continue these thoughts and the learnings.
Yes, I would be happy to help. It would be my pleasure.
It is our pleasure. Gosh, we love it, don't we? Thank you, Freya. That wasn't that scary, was it?
No, it's okay. It's okay. It'll be when I listen back to my voice that I'll sound a bit kooky, but it's all good. I'm kooky anyway, so it's okay.
It's awesome. I feel like there's just been so many things that are practical as well as conceptual. Listeners, if you haven't left a iTunes, Apple podcast review in, let's say, the last 12 months, I would love you to jump on and leave us a review. It helps other people to find us. It helps other people to hear Freya's amazing wisdom. So please do that, and we will see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land this podcast is recorded on. I would also like to pay respects to their elders, both past and present, of the Kulin Nation, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love you to rate and review the show on your podcast app. That will help others to find the Art of Decluttering podcast as well. If you'd like any more information, you can visit theartofdecluttering.com.au, and I would love to see you in my Facebook group. Just search the Art of Decluttering community on Facebook and join today. I hope that you have an incredible rest of your day and enjoy the freedom.